So one of the common errors, rather, with Animate is that sometimes people double click on a drawing object going into that instance and then not realizing what's happening. Notice when I double clicked on this object, everything else on the stage kind of grayed out and I can't select any other part of it. I can also see up here that I've gone inside that drawing object. When I'm inside that drawing object though, even though it's still a drawing object, it acts like a shape because it allows me, you see all the dots, and it allows me to select different parts of that object. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z to undo, and I'm going to go back to scene 1. This time I'm going to get my rectangle tool again, and I'm going to change the fill color to a green, and I'm going to draw a square again. So that means I've got to hold down my shift key so that it's a perfect square. Only, oops, I don't want object drawing mode this time. I want to take it off. So this is, it's going to create a shape, but we call it merge drawing mode, and you'll see why. So let me try that again. I start drawing my square, hold the shift key down to make it perfect, and I let go. If I double click on it, you can see all the dots. You can see that it's a shape here. So with the, if I click on it once, click on the fill, notice how it acts separately. Okay, same thing if I click on a side of the stroke, it's selecting only one piece of the stroke. If I double click on the stroke, it selects the entire stroke. If I want to select the entire thing, fill and stroke, I have to double click on the fill, or I can use that marquee method to drag and select the whole thing. With it selected though, I'm going to Control D. And I am going to move this a little further down, and then I'm going to Control D again, and I'm going to move this a little further down. Doesn't have to be exactly like the other one, but like that. Now if I deselect it again, notice that if I click on this piece, this fill, and drag, notice that it cut away parts of what was underneath it. Okay, this is what we call the cookie cutter method. So you can actually use shapes and the merge drawing mode to make custom shapes. So let's say I wanted to get rid of some of these strokes in the middle. I can click once and hit delete. And now I have a custom shape that has a fill and a stroke. Okay? If I select the whole thing, if I wanted that stroke and fill to stay together, I could select it and I could go up here to modify, combine objects, union. Now you see the blue outline around it, and you also see that it's a drawing object. And same thing in reverse. If I wanted this to be a shape, I could go up to modify and break apart, and now it's a shape. I do want it to stay a drawing object though, so I'm going to Control Z to undo. Okay, so next we're going to go to the oval tool, and I'm going to change my fill color to red, and I'm going to change my stroke to transparent. That's this white square with the red line through it. That way there's no stroke. Okay, and again, I can draw an oval, but if I want a perfect oval, or perfect circle rather, I hold down the shift key. I also, before I drew it, I want to make sure that my drawing mode is not set to drawing object or object drawing, that it's off. That way it draws in merge mode. So once again, I'm going to draw that circle. I can click on it and test it and confirm that it is a shape. And then I'm going to draw two more. So you know that if they're the same color, they're going to merge together as one, right? So if I drew it and they were overlapping, it would automatically stay there. So sometimes if you're wanting to draw a specific shape, you may want to draw it outside of the circle so it's not connected already. Oops. Duplicate, and while it's still, as long as it's still selected, I can move it and not have trouble. And then I can position it, oops, over the original one and use the arrows on my keyboard to get it perfect. And now it becomes one. Now you say, well, I think I want a stroke on it. Well, guess what? You can do that. So if I come up here to the paint bucket, there's this thing called an ink bottle tool that's docked underneath. There's a stroke here. And if I just click outside of it, notice that it applies a stroke. I could give it a bigger stroke if I wanted. And there it is. Now, it's still acting as a shape. It's just now a shape that has a stroke. So I can select both pieces, combine objects, union, and now it is an object that stays together and won't come apart. So we're going to grab that oval tool again, and this time instead of a solid color fill, we're going to come down here and choose a gradient. I'm going to choose the red and the black, and I'm going to take the stroke off. I'm going to make it transparent, and I'm going to turn on object drawing mode. Yep, it has the little gray area around it, so I know it's object. And I'm going to hold my shift key so that I make it a perfect circle. Okay, it's pretty simple here. It's just that the gradient gives it a little bit more dimension. Okay. Docked under this tool is the oval primitive tool. And I'm going to choose a different gradient. I'll do the green and the black. And if I make a perfect circle again, I want you to notice that there are, and let me see if I can zoom in on this, there is a blue dot in the center and out here. So if I grab my selection tool and drag on that dot, it is actually creating like a donut. Okay, so it is creating a hole there. And you can see that over here in your properties. That's this inner radius. So you can do it either by dragging the dot or in your properties. If you don't like what you're doing, you can always reset it and try again. Okay, let me zoom back out again. And I'm going to draw one more oval primitive. This one is going to be with the blue and black gradient. And you'll see that it drew this and it has the same settings, same circle in the middle, hole in the middle that the previous one did. And that's just because it remembers the settings that you did last. So I can reset that and work on opening up the outside, changing the start angle, changing the end angle, and I could even do an inner radius to make it look more like a C than an oval to begin with. And again, if I don't like what I've got, I can hit the reset and it's going to fix that. And now we're going to get the brush tool. And notice that there's two of them. There is a fluid brush and there's a classic brush tool. We're going to use the classic brush tool. If you don't see it there, remember, come down here to these three dots and pull out the classic brush tool. With the brush tool, let me close this. There we go. Over here, I want to make sure that I turn off the object drawing mode. So we're in paint merge mode again, drawing a shape. Oops, not fluid, classic. It's off, but I want to increase the size of my brush to, I'm going to say about 20-ish. And I'm just going to oops, I also want it to be blue right here, solid. So I'm just going to come up here and draw a triangle. And actually, I'm going to try to draw a triangle that does not overlap other things. Okay. Now, with that, make sure that you enclose it. But you can see here the dots. It's a shape. I'm going to go to my paint bucket and I'm going to fill that with the same color. And I'm going to deselect. You can click in the white or hit escape to deselect. So if I click on it, this is one solid shape now. Okay. So I'm going to get that classic brush tool again, and I'm going to change my color, my fill color, to this lighter blue, kind of a turquoisey blue, and I'm going to reduce my size to around 10, 13, somewhere in between there. Now, I want you to notice that we have this property here in the properties. We also have it down here, and I want you to notice that because we're going to need to go there. Paint selection. However, when we're choosing paint selection, that means we actually have to have something selected. So I'm going back to my selection tool to select, and then I'm going to my classic brush tool, and it's not showing here in properties. That's because we have this selected, so it's showing the properties of what we have selected. So I have to go down here to choose paint selection, and I am going to scribble across this triangle, and notice that even though I went across it and outside of it, it also it cut it off on the edge. So all I'm doing is whatever was selected, that's what I was painting over. So now I'm going to go ahead and deselect again, and I'm going to get my brush, and I'm going to change the fill to an orangey color. And I am going to select again. And I'm doing it this way with the marquee method this time, and that's because it has two colors to it. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to that brush, and this time I'm going to choose paint behind. When I do paint behind and do a little scribble and realize that I don't have to be exact because it's going to fix it for me. And it just sent it right behind the object that I had selected. So we've got one more tool we're going to look at here, and that's the Polystar tool. And notice in the properties down here at the bottom with tool options, you have the ability to change it from a polygon to a star. So you can change the number of sides, the star, how many points. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just pick a color, and I'm going to draw a 5-sided polygon. And then, and that is obviously in shape, so I need to double click and I need to combine it and make it a union. And then if I get that tool again, I'm going to change the color to yellow. Oops, nope, I have to deselect first. Deselect. And now I can go back and get yellow, fill, and I can do a black stroke. Now I can change it to a star, and I can change how many sides I want. Okay, so the standard would be 5, but I could make a 10-point star and put it up here, and it too needs to be double clicked so that I can combine objects and make it a union for a drawing object. So now we just want to Control S to save, or File and Save, and we want to export. So also under the File menu, you have Export, and if you go to Export Image, it's going to give you a pop-up that's going to allow you to choose what type of image you want. It could be a GIF, a JPEG, a PNG, a PNG24. That means it has more color possibilities. We'll just make it a JPEG with this. Or maybe we'll do a PNG with this. It doesn't really matter. And hit save, and it's going to pop up. It should try to save it into the same place where your .fla file is. with the same name that you have the document saved. So hit save, and you